Hello, everyone.
Hello. I think we are live. Are we live? Anyone? Yes, we can see ourselves. We're good. So, how's everybody? We are going to make a good start tonight. So, I should love to start off in prayer, and then we will get going. So, Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for your incredible goodness to us. We thank you for our amazing children that we each have. And we just know, Lord, that our children are a blessing from you, and that as we, in a sense, all of us sit under the teaching of your word, we my prayer is, Lord, that your spirit would quicken to life every word that counts for each person as they need the unique voice of God in their lives more than the fullness of teaching for tonight. So we really do pray for the interaction between the teaching and the Holy Spirit and supple hearts, and we just look forward to an incredibly fruitful time tonight. And my prayer is, Lord, that this teaching really would bear fruit in many families across the country and even across the world. So, amen. Right. So we are on to our final session, and it's I think a whole lot of really important things in here that we want to go through. So let me do that without much further ado. So
Is the screen changing? Just all good?
Not. It hasn't
Brian,
changed.
are we getting anything? Can you unmute yourself?
It's still. There we go.
Okay.
For the love of good God, beautiful.
For the love of good.
Good, working.
Oh, I thought it was the love of money we were talking about. No.
Okay, so it's changed. All good.
All right.
Okay.
Just let me know if it's delaying, and I'll, if it's going to lag each time I do something, just send us a note, and then I'll try and share and reshare. So just a very quick recap of what we were trying to talk about last week is that we are trying to raise children who don't just know how to behave, but they actually know, they have knowledge of the good, they love good, and they know how to outwork it. So these would be responsible young adults that leave our care and would truly be a blessing into any context that they are sent. That's what we're aiming for. To be quite frank, it's a very high standard and one well worth fighting for. It's my earnest belief that as parents, we can really send our children in to be world changers, and that doesn't necessarily mean to say they have to invent the vaccine for COVID, but it does mean that in whatever context they're in, they know how to love. They do love good, and they know how to outwork it, because that's really what will make a big difference. So that's our goal in all of this. Last week we spoke about self-control and the huge need for self-control. Right, your parenting have trained from a young age. If you're starting young as possible, start using every moment of your day to train self-control. Whether the boundaries seem arbitrary or not is almost irrelevant. But if you can use your daily life schedule to teach your children self-control, it's a huge investment in their lives, because, as you would well know, any major lapse of self-control can have very severe consequences. So that's what we spoke on last week. We also spoke about establishing morality, almost like the very fiber within a concrete substance, the very reinforcing rods. You don't see it, but a moral system, a moral code is vitally important. That's really the knowledge of doing good, or how to do good. In other words, what is right, what is wrong. And we spoke about how you do that in terms of sharing your heart. Take every opportunity to share your heart as to why you want to way. Why is it important that they should greet that person? Why is it important that they should stand up? And we'll actually talk a little bit about some of those whys tonight when we talk about the culture of honor, because a lot of it is rooted in the honoring of one another. And then lastly, we spoke last week about conscience and teaching our children to be very responsive to their hearts. And again, this is much more than just obeying rules, because it's actually from quite a young age, 5, 6 years old, our children are often away from our parental authority. They're at other people's houses and schools, whatever they might be, and they don't yet know everything, and they actually have to learn to listen to their hearts. And on top of that, we have, certainly my belief is that the Holy Spirit is as active in our children as it is in us if we are believers. And our children, I think God speaks to them often, and they are warned and guided, and in a sense told what to do by the Spirit. And so listening to their hearts is a very valuable, again, gift that we can give to our children to equip them in life. So we covered all of that last week, and if you weren't able to watch it or be there, I would highly encourage you to go and look at the material, not because it was something I taught, but rather because there's great value in doing things God's way, and that's helpful. So we were building a pyramid of the 4 stages of parenting. So last week we spoke about boundaries, which was that period of our children's lives in the approximately 0 to 5 year category, where we are really trying to establish self-control through the use of lots of boundaries. Having as many boundaries, you can afford to be quite strict in this arena. Your children generally will forget everything you've done, but the very fiber of who they are will be formed in this time. So it is our experience is that starting young is very, very helpful here. It doesn't mean to say you are disqualified from catching up in parenting if you haven't started young, but it is much easier to achieve a whole lot to do with self-control and the parental authority in those younger years. The next stage we looked at last week was what we call the training stage, where you are really trying to establish all of that moral code, the heart behind matters. Your children are old enough to understand a huge amount of life, and it's up to us to be teaching it to them. So we really are very actively involved in sharing our hearts, training them, and still the boundaries apply, and we're still having to actively parent them and correct them and discipline them and all the things that we have to do. But it's an incredible time of sharing your heart into their lives. And like I said when I spoke initially about these stages, they're very loosely defined. And also the things that one does in these stages flows from one into the other with a huge amount of overlap. So you still need boundaries with your young adults and teenagers, and you're training everybody all the time, but they really just sort of help us see it from a focus point of view. And then what we're going to look at tonight is the coaching years, the training of young adults. So this is something we will speak on in a moment. And then lastly, what you are aiming for is friendship with your children. So at some point, they are actually old enough, it can be anything 16, 17, 18 years old, where you're largely not parenting them anymore, and they are living their own lives. And that is the time for the fruitfulness of all of this hard work that you have done through the 16 or 18 years prior to that. So it is very important. The main point I'm trying to make in all of this is don't get the order wrong. You don't try to be best friends with anything under the age of sort of 12 or 13. It's not the right time to be aiming for friendship. There are moments of friendship and moments of great joy and fun and laughter. So I'm not saying you have to be dull and boring and horribly strict or anything like that, or aloof. But the point of it is your main role in those younger years is to be mom or dad and not friend. And friendship comes later and as a fruit as opposed to an active involvement.
And likewise, if you are imposing such strict boundaries in your 18-year-old's life, that will cause such frustration.
So, right, let's have a look at this stage that we wanted to pick up on this week, which is what some would call the teenage years, although that's a bit of a misnomer. A better description is young adults, because effectively that's what they are. They're physically quite mature, vaguely emotionally mature, and in years gone past would have actually already been in jobs, fighting wars, getting married and having So we mustn't sort of underestimate actually the capacity of young adults, right? Okay. So I think what we must see in these in this period now is that we are doing very different things in terms of our parenting. So I think the reality of this situation, though, contextually speaking, is with few exceptions, your children are largely not under your care anymore. So they are spending more time at school. They may be out of the home a lot more than they're in it. And your exposure or your airtime, your input into their lives may be reduced to like hours in a week, if that. Actually, you may have a meal together, and then they charge off somewhere else. And certainly as they get older and they suddenly realize they quite like their friends a lot more than their parents, they're charging around and doing a whole lot of stuff. So you really are reduced to coach at this point. You're no longer the main, in a sense, input into their life. They are living life and coming home for periodic sort of halftime type moments where if you've got good relationship, they will open up to you and say, well, this happened and that happened and this person said that. So you have a very different role at this point. So what we see, and Sheila mentioned this, is that there's a relaxing of the boundaries. That doesn't mean to say the boundaries disappear altogether. And if your children have a collapse in morality and self-control, you are required as parents to then, in a sense, treat them as at the level of their self-control and reinforce a boundary and to bring back in a boundary, which will often be to do with a cell phone or a type of behavior, coming home late or being irresponsible with something. And so don't hear me say there are no boundaries. I'm just saying you're relaxing the boundaries. They should be having more and more opportunity to demonstrate self-control, knowing that they are going to fail at times. And then in which case there's always a consequence. If they fail in the use of a freedom, if they're given freedom and they are proved to be irresponsible, then you withdraw the freedom. And it must just be, if you are once again going through the everything we've spoken about in that whole section on discipline, where we spoke about proactive communication, agreeing with the boundaries, having out of conflict conversations with them to explain your heart. If you've done all of that, then when it comes to a collapse and you have to remove a freedom, it's not traumatic because they know it's coming. It's just, that's the reality. It's life. So that's what you want to do when I speak about relaxing boundaries. Don't be so restrictive that they can never make a mistake. They need to make mistakes at this point. I think very important though is you're really wanting to be reinforcing self-control. So you want to be giving them space to demonstrate it. In other words, they should. You're not the control anymore. They are. And but when they show self-control, for example, just celebrate it. You know, like when they you see them doing something on the computer and some random pornographic site pops up and they deal with it quickly and decisively, or they tell you about it. Or if, let's say they were with friends and somebody shows them a picture and they were able to turn away and then they tell you about it afterwards, and you sort of post-processing, really celebrate their successes in self-control. And if they have a collapse in self-control, which will happen because they're teenagers, they're young adults and they're not fully mature and they'll do stupid things, like we've all done. You know, we've all been there. Don't savage them. You know, I mean, it's really you impose the consequences, whatever the consequences are. But at the end of the day, it's more of a discussion as to the consequences associated with the lapse in self-control. So, for example, you know, if you had a situation, for example, where your child admits to you that they have been watching pornography or looking at something, and now their guilty conscience is really working with them, and they come to you and they open up. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift to be let into somebody's weakest area, and it would be a deep mistake to rush in there with a bludgeon and try and demonstrate your authority by bringing a vigorous and harsh punishment. So to me, this is where you really want to speak to them about the necessity for self-control. Show them the journey of what it can look like to be caught up in pornography. Look at websites together of people of these testimonies and these sort of these websites that will help people overcome addictions and show them what it's going to be like if they don't deal with this thing. Actually coach them through the moment, as opposed to just say, well, that's it, you never going to look at the internet again ever until you're 30, and it's just unhelpful. So it's a very delicate thing of finding the right boundaries, freedoms, consequences, but the overall heart is to coach your children through the moment. Because the reality is we all have moral failure, even as adults, and it's rather the way we get dealt with it that is better than, so you know what I'm saying. So a big part of this, again, is affirming their conscience, because that's the thing that is actually guiding them. The Holy Spirit working in their conscience. Again and again and again, be asking them the question, what is your heart saying? What is the Holy Spirit saying? What is God saying to you? Just for us, we've tried to set a culture in our family that our children are constantly expected to be hearing from God. So we'll be asking them the question. If they come to us with a situation and they say, well, this happened and these friends said this and blah, 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 whole complex, massively complex emotional trauma that a teenager can get embroiled in. And you say, well, what is God saying in all of this? And you help them probe their hearts. But at the end of the day, a greater skill is not that they rush to you, but that they would learn to rush to God with their difficulties. So it's a great thing of affirming. When I speak about their conscience, I'm really talking about that seat of our hearts that God speaks into, because He is like that. He is their Heavenly Father as much as He is ours. And then lastly, and this is something we're going to unpack in some degree of detail, is this issue of identity, which, to be honest, is starting much younger than young adult years, probably even from the day they're born, is you are establishing your child's identity. But the reason why I raise it in the young adult season is because it's a very big thing for young adults. They really are, up until now, they've been known as your children, but now they are more than that. They are their own people. They're their own adults coming into their adulthood. They're finding they have all sorts of opinions and thoughts, and their belief system has been formed and challenged, and they're going to school where there's atheists and this and that and the whole thing. And so the identity, in a sense, is really tested in your young adult years. So it is a kind of a focus of all of this. So let's just have a look at that for a little bit of time. So I think that the first thing we must be aware of, and I'm sure you are aware of it, but that is our culture is sending a very strong message of identity. And it basically is a message to somebody when you are, and then there's all sorts of things you could say, when you are beautiful, when there's something about your physical appearance that is attractive, when you're wearing the right clothes, or when you are highly educated and you've achieved academically, or you've really made it on the sports field, or you've got all this cash, or you've got all the possessions and the status symbols. And there's probably several others we could add there, but the world has all these what we call measures of success, and everything, like literally every daily message that is given to us from our culture, every advert that we see, every magazine front cover, and so on, is emphasizing this message that you have only made it when you have ticked or achieved certain measures of worldly success. And that is their identity. That is a very, very strong message that all of us are subject to some degree. And no doubt, all of us, if we examine those times when we feel at our weakest and our most discouraged and all the rest of it, it's generally because we've been evaluating ourselves against a worldly measure of success, and you feel like you failed. And so we must know that message of perfection, in it, it's a very pervasive lie. It's everywhere, and it's very difficult to get away. So
we're not saying that it's wrong to have incredibly good, beautiful looks, or be wealthy, or to be well educated. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying when we feel
when our identity is caught up in it, yeah. So if you own that particular car that's in the photograph, I hope you're not feeling guilty right now. But that's just be free, whatever it is. So that's it's a big message and the reality is if you are not deliberately, intentionally establishing a very different message, this is what your children are going to evaluate themselves against. And we should not be surprised that, of all the times in the existence of the world, that there's such a high level of teenage depression and suicide and all the rest of it. So it's a very, very serious thing. So just to help us understand the argument here, everybody has needs. We have internal needs, holes that need to be filled, and if we don't fill them in the right way, they get filled in the wrong way. So we definitely have a need to be secure, and I'll unpack each of these and show you how to parent into each one of these areas. So we need to be secure, which basically means that we need to know that something of the future is secure, that we would love to know that security is in place, that things are stable, and that there's a measure of predictability. So that's the entire basis of insurance and all sorts of other things is in this concept that there's a need to measure or have a need for security. There's a desperate need in all of us to be accepted. We really, really need to be accepted by our family, by our peers, by friends, and loved ones, whatever. And it's a deep human need. And lastly, we have a need to be significant, to know that our life actually does count, that we're not just a sort of curiously obliging collection of atoms that temporarily coalesce to form you and then at some point rejoin the universe, and there's absolutely no meaning to it all. That is a deeply depressing message, even to atheists. If you read up on sort of people who are atheists, this is a big issue, is that actually what is the significance of life if you don't believe in God and all the rest of it. So these are not wrong things, they're just deep human needs, and we need to fill them in the right way.
We all need to feel secure, we all need to be accepted, and we all need to be significant.
So our role as parents is to fill our children's SAS requirements, because if we don't, with our message, then the world or the culture around them will get in there, and they will have a misleading and potentially completely unattainable message, which will lead to having some insecurities and doubts about life. Okay, let's have a look at this. All want to be secure. So these are my perspectives on it, and I'm sure if one were to research this and get into a bit more detail, one could go a lot more into this. But for me, I think we want to show our children that life has ups and downs, and actually that God is the only security in all of this. So if you think about it, even right now in the world, I mean, what's happening across the world is a clear demonstration that every system that we thought we could trust has been sorely tested and shaken to the core. So financial systems, health systems, governmental systems are really being shown for actually how wonky they are, how unstable. When they get pushed, they actually can rattle and grow and potentially collapse quite a bit. So we really want to show our children, not protect them from this knowledge. To me,
age appropriate.
I'm coming to that. Yeah, but security is not found. I think this is a core statement. This is my belief as a Christian, is that there is nothing in this world that is secure. There really isn't. There is nothing that we can truly say, if I put my trust in that thing, in that system, in that government, if I move to this country, if I got this job, that I would be secure. Because that is a figment, that is an illusion. It does not exist on earth. And all that's been happening in the current world is that's been shown to be true. So I think certainly as your children get older and older, pointing this out to them is actually a gift. It doesn't bring insecurity, it brings security, because you can then go to say, well, let me show you somebody who is secure. Let's talk about how God interacts with us within this world of ups and downs. So to the best of your ability, in as much as you can preach, you don't have to have a microphone to preach, but take what you know of your faith, what faith you have in God, and you point your children to that, the person of who Jesus is, because therein lies security. So I think in this, we don't lie to our children, but we do help them with age-appropriate truth. So I don't think burdening very young children with the full spectrum of the heaviness of this world is helpful. But as you in your heart sense your children are growing stronger and stronger, as best you can, you articulate the truths of this world to them, because there is no security in this world. So don't create when I say don't lie to them, don't fabricate a truth that there is some measure of security, that life is a fairy tale and it's all going to end well, because that is effectively a lie, and it doesn't work out like that. But there's a way to do it.
So, for example, we've had conversations with our children like, what happens if Richard and I get killed in a car accident tomorrow? You know, or how they're going to handle it. And we've had really good conversations, because bad things happen to good people, and we wanted them to be secure in who they are in Christ and not in what's around them. So we have these conversations, and they ask hard questions, and sometimes we don't have the answers, but we just want to life-proof our children as much as we can.
So we didn't have those conversations when they were 3, because they would struggle, but as they've gotten older, 8, 9, 10, 11 onwards, you know, we were talking about, certainly as young adults, that, you know, as much as it would be devastating for the whole family if one of us were to die, they prepared for it, actually, because that is a reality. It could happen. I think a big part of it is, for me, putting your hope in eternity. In other words, my security, my belief, does not lie on this earth. My security lies in eternity, and we have spoken about this to our children. We talk to them about heaven and eternity and these things. It's if you're not used to doing that, I mean, I do preach in church and things, so it might be easier for me. But you know what? Get used to it. It's actually a reality. If you don't understand what it means to the concepts of heaven and eternity and where God fits into all of this, then open a Bible and do some Bible study and take your kids on the journey, because that is the reality. That is where security is found, not on anything in this world. And then lastly, for me, very importantly, lead your children to salvation. It's not just because you might be a Christian and your kids are, in a sense, going to church and kids ministry, don't ever rest on the assumption that your children have just made a decision for Christ. Lead them down that journey, have discussions, have Bible time, talk about these things, because security lies in the person of Jesus Christ, in relationship with Jesus Christ. And when you have that in your heart, and you truly believe that heaven is for real, and that what happens on this world is a passing mist, flowers and mist, it's a minor thing that actually, even if it goes up or down, it doesn't really matter too much. It's not an eternal question. Then that is security. When you're in that place, then it's a secure thing. Right. Sorry, I'll go preaching there. Okay, let's go on. Everyone needs to be accepted. So this is this core need that we would love to have people like us. All of us want to have people accept and like us. So what we did for us in our family is we made our family a safe place. It was no matter what the idea was that no matter what happened in the world around them, if their friends were horrible to them, or if they went somewhere and this happened or that happened, when they came home, our family, 2 parents and 4 siblings, was going to be a safe place, and that looked like something. So it meant that there was never any ugly. We never allowed ugliness between our children. Harsh words, strong language, anger, fighting, attitudes. Now that doesn't mean to say it never happened.
Oh, no.
But I'm sure you're quite the converse.
We had to parent very hard.
But we never left it. If there was even literally a hint of something, of a bad attitude creeping in between 2 siblings, we stepped in there and disciplined that moment. Not punished, just disciplined it. We would bring correction. And our language would look like something, you guys are best friends. They may not feel like best friends right there in there, but we say, you are best friends, and
You've got each other for life.
You've got each other for life, and this family, and we would talk about in Team LO, and we are the Lechmertels. In Team LO, we do not fight with each other. We do not speak ugly things over each other. We never criticize, and we would be strong, very strong on this one. And it's borne fruit, to be honest. It was lots of hard work, because all of our children had moments, periods of time when they really, really were antagonistic to one another. But we never took it lying down. And now, as they getting into their young adult years, and we're just seeing depths of friendships between them, that has really made it worthwhile. So that was us. Our family was a safe place. And so we celebrated and we commiserated together, but we never criticized, judged. We were never unkind.
Because there's enough of that out in the world.
I think kindness was a big thing. And for us, a statement we would often make is, if you do not have something nice to say, then don't say anything. And it was something we really stood by on that. And then another thing is, you can speak words of life over your children. Train yourself to verbalize how you feel about your children, even if it's very embryonic. In other words, get into the habit of saying, I love this about you. I love it when you do this. I love it when you, and you, this, sometimes as people, especially as fathers, and if you're a father listening to this, really take note of this. Sometimes as guys, we are reticent. We hold back our words. We're not used to expressing our emotions. And I'm very much like that. I'm not a naturally effusive, sort of emotionally gushy sort of person. And but I just had to train myself to verbalize what I love about my children and speak to them, say it in front of each other. Just get in the habit of speaking words of life. What do you want to see? And also celebrate their character, their godly character, particularly if there's one or two things that you really are wanting to see. If you see them in embryonic form, just jump in there and blow the trumpet and celebrate that one. And then I think very importantly is never tease or attack identity. So this is this whole concept of making family a safe place. Don't, we have a lot of fun in our family. We tease each other and joist and spar verbally, and there's lots of laughter and fun and games verbally and debate and all the rest of it. But we've learned never to tease somebody in a sore spot, in a something of who they are as a person. So if you find yourself saying, like, you are always like this, or even as a joke, you always like this. That's a word that is, if it comes from a sibling, especially an older sibling or a parent, and it's even said in jest, it cuts into the heart a little bit, and it's unhelpful. We actually find it unhelpful. So don't, just be very sensitive around that. And then related to that is this business of don't address bad behavior through identity. So what I mean by that is, your children may have a characteristically bad habit that you really don't like. They behave in a certain way, and it truly is wrong and irritates you deeply. It's unhelpful to say you are always naughty, or you always talk back to me. You are always like this, and you effectively are speaking a word of identity. The very thing you don't want to see, you are speaking into their lives and confirming it again and again. So a better way to say that is to say, you know what, when you behave like this, and you actually refer to the behavior, when you behave like this, it is saddening, it's frustrating, it's whatever it might be. So you speak to the behavior, and then I would go so far as to say, this behavior is not who you are. You are not like this. I've seen who you are. You are actually a kind person. And when you use these unkind words, you are not behaving the way you are made to behave. So you affirm the positive in identity, and you discipline and speak to the behavior that you don't want to see. I'm hoping that's clear for you. Right. The last of the three. So we had security, we had acceptance and significance. And then we all want to be significant. We want to know that our lives count, that they mean something. And teenagers or young adults, this is very, very important. They are really there's a lot of data to show this. They're in a stage of their lives when their belief system is being really formed, and they're very idealistic, and they want to know that they are part of something more than just mere existence. So for me, what this looks like is encourage your children with your words. You speak into their significance. You tell them as men and women that you are going to have what it takes. That's a big part of being significant. They want to know there's a deep need that when we go into life, that we will actually have what it takes. For men, that'll be, will I be able to provide for my family? Will I be able to be a loving man, to have children? All these things. Will I be courageous? Will I be brave and strong and good? These are actually deep needs within men and women. It's not a wrong thing for a woman to want to be beautiful and want to be loved and want to have what it takes to attract and to keep a man and to be a success in their career and all of these things. So this is what I mean when it's they can niggle. If you are growing up in the absence of encouragement, you will have a question mark over some deep area of need as to whether or not you will actually have what it takes. So I think you can verbalize that. You can, from a young age, be saying to your children, you have what it takes. You've got the courage. You've got the kindness. You've got the intelligence to do well. You men, I think it's right and good that you would be saying to your daughters, you are beautiful. You will have what it takes to attract a man and to be a good wife. And just, I'm struggling with the words because it's a slightly artificial environment, but as best you can in the naturalness of life, have a habit of verbalizing to your children that they have what it takes. And then I think speak into their their destiny and their calling as best you can see it, even when correcting them. So I'll just start with the correcting one. So for example, instead of, like I was referring to, don't ever attack their identity in correcting them. So there might be something that your child does that you just think, oh, that's no good. And then instead of like jumping on them about that issue, rather speak to them about what you see in their future. In other words, you can say, no, I really feel that God has this call on your life. In a sense, you're almost going into a prophetic type of situation where you as a parent know your children well. You can start to see what God has for them, even if it's just to be a lovely husband or a wife or whatever it might be. And you say, I can see that God has this call over your life, but there's this thing that you're doing. When you speak unkindly to this person, or when you behave like this, or when you don't control your anger, or whatever it might be, do you realize that it's going to stop you walking in that thing? And you speaking, you're talking the language of destiny and call that God has for them, and it's a very helpful thing to do that. My understanding is that God does call us, and He has a plan and a purpose for each individual on earth, and we are part of a bigger plan. And we don't fully know it, but I verbalize it. We speak about this often to our kids about God's plan for their life and the destiny, and we have all sorts of family discussion around that. And then lastly, lastly, in terms of significance, I want to speak about it's built on this concept of it being built on belonging and contribution. So being significant is not a selfish thing. Actually, significance is not selfishness. Success can be selfishness. You see, I didn't use the word we all want to be successful, because you can achieve a measure of success and be totally insignificant. You can become greatly wealthy and the top of a business or a top academic or sportsman. So you can achieve success without being a nice person, without having godly character, without being an influencer. And so for me, significance is deeply not selfish. So it's built on on two concepts, belonging and contribution. So what this looks like for us in our family is we try to have a family vision that is bigger than mere survival or even security. In other words, as much as it's nice to have a comfortable home and a comfortable existence and a regular income and all of those things, and believe me, I know what it's like not to have them, and the frustration and the stress associated with it. So I'm not living in some sort of strange world of make-believe. So it is hard, especially if you're the provider in the family and you don't have it right now. It's hard. But the reality is none of us want to spend our entire lives just existing and just making enough and just, in a sense, serving ourselves. So have a family vision that looks beyond just existence. Look to your community. Look broader than just your immediate needs, and have a way of expressing generosity. Even if you don't have the financial resources, you've got time, you've got energy. Your children have muscles. Get them to do stuff that is giving, that is outward looking, is generous, and speak about it, and get them to plan the activities and who they should give it to. So we often will ask our children, we'll talk about being generous, and then to, and then they will come up with an answer, and then they will implement it and get to do it. And it's just a culture that we've tried to bring about in our family of bigger vision. And when we've traveled in terms of ministry, and we've tried as much as possible at great cost in time, energy, and sanity to take our children, more sanity for Sheila, to take our children with us. And it hasn't always been easy, but they're part of a big picture in the kingdom of God, and we wanted them to know that. And we've built this on a family identity. It's the identity is established around being good people and doing good things. But it's more than that. We are able to make a statement that we are Team Aloha, and therefore we behave in a certain way, we think in a certain way, we believe God for certain things. Our identity is firmly established, and our children belong to our family. So we are able to say, look, this behavior that we're seeing in you, that's not part of who we are. So let's deal with it, because that's not ideal. And yeah. And then just lastly on this point, contribution. It's an interesting thing, and I haven't got time to talk about some of the psychology behind it, not that I know much about it, but it's there. Is that we have a need to contribute, to actually be contributors as opposed to receivers. And so encourage your children to be contributors. Have a system of chores in your house. From the youngest of ages, you can do this. As soon as they are physically capable of tottering and walking, they actually slow you down quite a lot. You can get the job done much faster, but that's not the point. So involve your children in the daily life of your family. And we've seen this in our lives. They start off needing to be like slaves. They need to be told what they to do, and you have a list, and it's a chores list, and nobody wants to do it. And you have to speak about it often, and there may be consequences and things if they don't do it. And so for us, for example, that looked like you don't get the privilege of having computer time if you haven't done your chores, which be emptying the dustbins and buying all these things. There's a whole list on the fridge. And but actually, we don't want to be driving slaves with a whip at this point. So you almost want to progress them from that through to a servant-hearted mindset, which is one of, it's not lacquer, but we just have to get the job done. And so, we'll just do it as like you would a servant. It's your job. You get paid to do it, but it's okay. But actually, where you're aiming, and we're just starting to see it we're certainly seeing it in our eldest, our daughter, and I'm starting to see it in our son, the eldest 17-year-old son, where they behave like a son in the house. In other words, this is family business. I don't have to be asked to do something. I don't have to be told. It doesn't have to be on a list like an official in a government system or somewhere like that. But actually, because this is our family, I'm just going to do this. And that's where we're aiming, and we're just starting to see the fruit of it. It's easier, seemingly, in our daughter than our son, but it's coming. It's coming. So that's what you're aiming for. You don't want to be stuck on a list all the time. Okay, so just to come into land on this section, then we'll have a break. One thing I want to say about acceptance and significance is uncouple it from skill development. So what I mean by that is that very often in our language, we very quickly encourage and emphasize gifts and talents and skills. Like you played that piece of music beautifully, or whatever it might be, or you are looking so beautiful today, and blah, 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 blah. We are so good at affirming and encouraging the package of success, worldly success. And that's not a bad thing. Please don't hear me. I mean, it's right and good that you would do that, but don't ever link it to acceptance and significance. In other words, actually, a person can have what it takes, even if they are never a good sportsman, or never do well at school, or never, whatever it might be in the world's eyes. So they should always feel accepted in the family, even if they're not doing well, in terms of those measures of success. And also, your language of significance should not only be linked to moments of achievement, because the result of, if you're only ever saying, well done, when they succeed, when they get the A, when they get whatever it might be, if that's the only time they're hearing you say well done, you're effectively creating a breeding ground for like a very driven personality mindset. It's unhelpful. So your language of affirmation should really emphasize character and skill.
So, for example, if it comes to academics, it would be even if they got 50% or they failed, but they tried really hard and they worked hard, when you celebrate their work ethic and their perseverance, and it doesn't matter about the marks.
So, just to land here before we have a break, the big question, like I started off with, whose voice is the most dominant in your children's life, most influential? Because the reality is there are many voices. They've got their peer group. If they're old enough to have a cell phone and they're accessing whatever they're accessing, there are many, many voices coming into their world. And the reality is, and it's just a statement of fact, if you are not the loudest voice, there's another loud voice. And it's not the voice that you want to hear in your children's lives. You really cannot build, they cannot build a successful, godly life on other voices. So my encouragement to you as parents, spend the time coaching your children, speaking to them, sharing your heart, speaking identity. And if you're not used to doing it, just get over yourself and start doing it. Actually, it's a matter of disciplining yourself to do this, because you are their parents and your voice is the voice that they need to be built on. So we are going to have a 10-minute break. It is now 7:47, so we shall resume at, well, should we say 8 o'clock?
Fine.
Fine, I'll be generous. We have 13 minutes. How's that? Okay, see you then.
Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all day long.
Howdy. I probably need to make that smaller.
That music was just amazing and perfectly timed. Give me a sec to organize ourselves. I have Carlos in full screen here.
Hello, Carlos.
Hello, Carlos. Happy day.
Good to
Right.
see you.
Okay, so for all those who want to know, that was Ella Fitzgerald. I think I could have been a DJ.
No.
Music, not. Okay. What we want to talk about next and land the evening with, land the course, is cultivating a culture of honor. And what we want to really deal with is a deep heart of selfishness that is inherently human. So if you think right back to the very beginning, we spoke about that children are like cell phones that come with these pre-programmed apps that are just unhelpful, or even like spam or something like that. But you have to get it off your phone before you're happy with your phone. And selfishness is one of those. It's a real biggie. There's something deeply, inherently selfish in all human beings. It's part of our fleshly nature, this deep need to look after number one. And your children come incredibly pre-programmed in this area. They are top marks in selfishness, and you have to unprogram that and program in another heart, which really is a culture of honor, where we look around one another and we see that there are other people involved in all of this. So it is a very necessary part of parenting. And the reality is, the way Jesus does things is extremely other-centered. So the instruction to us in Scripture is Philippians 2. It's one of many, but I just chose this one. Philippians 2, verses 3-4. It says, "Do nothing," I like it, "nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves, each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. So the heart, the way I come to think of this is I want my children to be able to go into any situation and not be asking the question, what can I get out of this? But rather, how can I add value to this? And I mean, if you think of that, the practical application of that, I mean, even in their relationships, one day they're going to be married, and ideally in a marriage, it's not what can you get out of it, but what can you bring into it. And I know we don't live that to perfection. I know Sheila struggles a bit, but it's careful. It's
very close.
Very close to the edge. But the point is that things work much better when you're in a society of people who are looking for opportunities to give as opposed to opportunities to take. And unfortunately, the world, of course, is very different. But we are not of this world. If you're a Christian, you're of heaven and of the kingdom of heaven, and we are Christ-like. So this is a big part of training our children, is teaching them other-centeredness, how to do this. And as I say, it's a long battle of parenting. It's one of the lifelong goals of parenting. And you'll certainly find with your young children, this is something that you have to work at a lot, because you really are countering a very deep human instinct to be selfish. So don't be, if your children don't quickly respond, don't be discouraged. Just keep going, keep requiring, keep setting a high standard, and keep helping your children to that standard. So we're not going to look at all of these, but if you think of the concepts of honor and respect, which really speak about showing and feeling a high regard for other people, other things, they can be reflected in a number of different ways. So ideally, you want them towards God. You should be showing God honor and respect. But it also can come to parents, it can go to elders, it can siblings and peers, it can go to nature. You can have respect for property and authority, and even oneself. And in fact, everything I've spoken about identity is about building a picture of having respect and honor for yourself, that you have all of those needs, those SAS needs met. You will respect and honor yourself. And if you've got self-control, you respect and honor yourself. And so actually, I'm not going to speak about oneself, because that's really the whole heart of the parenting course, is establishing your children in such a way that they are able to respect and honor themselves easily. Because we all know what it's like to have moral failure and collapses of self-control, and how quickly we can lose our own self-respect. And it's an important part of life. So it's not arrogance, it's just self-respect. So what we are going to start with is respect for parents, because the respect for parents is probably the foundation of all other forms of respect. Certainly for very young children, they have no clue who God is. They've got no concept of God. They don't really know about other people yet. There's some vague other people. But young children, we're talking like toddlers and under, they know their parents. They know their voice, and that's your starting blocks of respect. It's foundational. And even as your children grow older, it's hard for them to show other lines of respect if they do not respect you as parents. And so it's important that your children come to respect you. And actually, that's an instruction to your children, as it says in Ephesians 6. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And it says, he starts to quote Exodus, and he says, honor your father and mother. And he comments on this, saying, this is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on this earth. And what an incredible blessing. In other words, you're not just doing this because you as a parent have a need to be respected. Actually, this is a gift. If you train your children to respect you, you are teaching them, you're blessing them, you're giving them an opportunity to exercise this particular blessing. So it's not a bad thing. And just practically speaking, I mean, this is the question, of course, comes to mind is, how do you do this? Well, it's actually everything we've spoken about in the previous 5 weeks would be the tools, because it's this business of teaching them to obey your voice, requiring them to obey you. But you do that in a way that doesn't frustrate them, because, of course, the scripture does go on to say, parents, don't frustrate or exasperate your children. So everything, all the skills we try to convey are the skills that you would need to help you implement this. But the point I'm trying to make here is that it's a worthy standard. It's really important for your children to respect you. Initially, your voice and your command, your authority, when they're
First time
very
obedience comes in there.
requiring first-time obedience. All of that is not just a nice to have because it's good behavior. It's actually deeply rooted in character and respect, and it's a necessary part of it. And I think one thing I would say though is helpful is how do you speak of your parents in front of your children? In other words, their grandparents. Sometimes we can be dismissive of our grandparents or of our parents, or frustrated by them, and it's an onerous thing to speak to your mom or do something with your family, your parents, because they're old now, and it's a frustration. But if you're verbalizing that in front of your children, you're actually undermining the very thing that you are trying to achieve. So just watch your language about how you speak about your folks and your ancestors in that respect. Just also another key thing on this, just remember your children one day will be choosing your old age home, maybe, and your frail care, and will be looking after you. So this is it can be a little bit self-serving in all of this. Another line of respect I want to talk about is one about just being for older people, respect for elders. And this might be seemingly like quite a quaint colonial era type of respect. And but there's a scripture that speaks to this, Leviticus 19, rise in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. It's actually a form of worship to God, is when we are literally standing in their presence. In other words, and for us, we took this to mean that when our children, when an older person, and something like that was like our generation, would walk into a room, our expectation and the goal of our parenting was that they should stop what they're doing. You know, if it's a DVD or whatever it might be, just pause it. If they'd get up from their game, they would physically stand to their feet, and they would greet that person in a culturally appropriate way. And it was showing respect. And it's not just old-fashioned. This is actually training them to outwork something that is deeply embedded in all cultures and societies, which is that there's a respect just because a person is older than you. And the word there, I think, is kind of important, is respect. It's not tolerate. We're not just there to tolerate aged people, older people, but actually to respect them. So I think there's something in the training of children to teach them how to engage in conversation with older people, actually encourage them, try to set up times in your family dynamic with your friends that your children are in with you, all of you, so that the kids don't just all just scamper off to play and they're only ever socializing in their age group. There's something about intentionally setting up times and scenarios where the whole group of you, all the adults and all the children, are together having conversation and being part of it, because it's not a tolerance thing. You don't want your children to tolerate you and your friends, but actually to respect them and be part of each other's lives. So this can look like many things. Getting up on a bus, if you travel on public transport and your kids are seated and an older person walks in, and that whole thing, get them to kick them off the chair. You might have to physically say, move, nudge, nudge, because it's not a natural thing. But just do it because it's important. And opening doors for people, all of that stuff. It's not just quaint. It's in a deeply embedded value system that's important it's important to God. It's part of our worship to God. Then another line of respect I want to tackle is siblings and peers. This is probably the most relevant for most families. In fact, there were even some questions about sibling rivalry and children getting each other bashing each other and fighting and arguing and all the rest of it. Really, the heart that you're trying to implement here is scriptural command again, is do to others as you would have done to you. It's not a direct translation, but it's just the heart of the scriptures, is do to others as you would have done to you. And so for us, I think the way we try to implement this, and there's probably many ways you can do this, but these are just principles that work for us. Firstly, proactively speak about what you want to see, not what you don't want to see. So at every age group, there's kindness and respect for one's peers and siblings actually physically looks like something. So tell your children what it looks like. Role play it, scenario play it. So if let's say, for example, in your family, your children's fighting manifests as unkind words. Out of conflict, talk about what kindness actually looks like, what nice words look like, what respect looks like at that age, so that they can really see it. You know, the concepts of respect and kindness are, in some ways, they're conceptual ideas, and young children may struggle to understand them. So if they are, sit them down, set up a group game. Let's say they, for example, the last time they were together, they were fighting over Lego and saying all sorts of horrible things to each other. Out of conflict, to recreate that moment, put out the Lego set, have the kids sitting there, and then just take them through it almost like a game, you know, like make it fun and say, look, remember you said that and then they did this, and how did you feel? And then now this is what it looks like when you do it differently. And then you actually teach them kind words and say, rather instead of snatching and taking for you, why don't you offer and try it like that? Now it might seem somewhat twee or arbitrary, but I think if you do that, if you haven't told them what you were looking for, it's difficult to correct what you don't want to see.
Another thing is what does happen in the younger years is when it comes to playing with toys, children don't want to share a toy. So we had a system of special toys, and if we had someone coming to play, I would say to the children, which are your special toys? And they'd go around and find their special toys, then we'd pack them away. And then I'd say, because we want to respect our friends, it would be unkind for you to play with your special toys and not let them play with it. So we'd pack it away, and it would be a proactive discussion, and we'd say, okay, you can't play with your special doll today when so-and-so's come to play, but as soon as she goes home, you can play with her. And it worked really well. Again, we often had a thing where someone's birthday, and then they'd open their new present, and then all the siblings want to play with the new present. So up front, before the birthday even happened, we'd proactively say, okay, so it's Thomas's birthday, and he's probably going to get a present that you're going to want to play with. Let's just let him play with it for the day. Don't ask him, just out of respect. And we would set them up for success, and it really did help diffuse a whole lot of potentially horrible parenting moments.
So that's the first thing. So proactively, what do you want to see? And then reactively, we just never tolerated any form of fighting or disrespect amongst our children. So when I say tolerate, I'm saying we wouldn't ever ignore it. Even if we were really tired and it would be easier just to ignore it. For us, this was a really important value, that our family was Team LO and that we loved each other and that looked like something. So at the first hint, and I had spoken about this, if there was any sort of harsh language or unkind words or just argy-bargy sort of stuff, you can immediately pick it up in your family, and I would have a series of consequences that are appropriate for the moment. So for us, and there was a question from this, well, no, it's really yeah. I mean, what are the sort of consequences? Yeah. You're no longer muted. Thank you. And for us, if there was physical fighting, which did happen occasionally, and or something really horrible was said, for us, for that would be a spanking moment.
This was before it was outlawed in South Africa.
But I mean, personally, I would still be doing that, but that's my conviction. So if it was a real matter of the heart, in other words, I'd seen into their heart and I did not like what I saw, either because it was violent or really aggressive, then for me that was a spanking. If it was often it's a mutual thing, there's two siblings involved and they're both being unkind to each other, they would lose the privilege of whatever game they were playing, and they would both be isolated, not a time bomb. Timeout bomb squad moment. This wasn't diffusing the tension. This was now they've actually transgressed. Right, you can both go and find a neutral toilet spot, and 10 or whatever minutes, 15 minutes, they would have to sit there half an hour, depending on the age. They were just they lost the privilege of life in general, being able to play and things like that. And another one, as they got older and they started loving seeing their friends, we found it hugely effective just to say, if you cannot be friends with your own siblings, you lose the privilege of going to see your friend or have a friend come and play. And so those are the sort of consequences that we used, and they seemingly.
One time, one of my children didn't go to a birthday party because of a situation like this. I had to phone the mom and explain why they couldn't go. And another time, I almost cancelled one of my children's birthday parties that was happening in my home because of some terrible words that were said to another little boy. The only reason why I didn't cancel is I knew all my friends were going out on dates with their husband that night because I was having a sleepover with their kids, and I actually couldn't do it to my friends. But we spoke about actually giving the presents back that they'd received because of his despicable behavior. So you just find the thing that will
really sting.
Yeah, the thing that's painful for them.
And I think on this whole concept is also, once again, model it well, just like the way you speak about your parents, but how as a couple do you speak to each other? Are you respecting one another? I mean, I know we as couples, we do have differences and we do argue, and you know, there's times when you are processing your marriage, but I would not recommend doing that in front of your children if you are struggling to contain your emotions. So try and model it well. Even the way you speak about other people, if you do find yourself, in the hearing of your children, like talking badly of other people, you must know they are listening to that, and that's essentially what they're going to model. So just be very cautious with your language, and I mean, it's a good life skill. Just that principle, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything. It's actually just really good advice. Okay. So let's have a look at next slide. Sorry, my mouse went to sleep. Okay, so next thing is we want to talk about is communicating with honor. I think this thing of communication is absolutely a gift to our children. Our entire world revolves around communication. If there's a life skill, I mean a practical life skill that will stand you in good stead, is learning how to communicate well. And that looks like many things. It looks like greeting. It looks like acceptable and unacceptable forms of communication. It looks like knowing how to interrupt and knowing how to communicate your emotions. All of these things are incredibly important life skills. I'm not talking about your use of language and whether you can articulate English or another language correctly. I'm talking about the ability to interact and communicate with other people, and whether your forms of communication are communicating honor or dishonor. And all of us could think of examples of people who struggle to communicate well. In other words, they're always sort of aggressive or this or that, and their body language is doing this, and it's actually unhelpful. And so, to be honest, it's a setback in life. If you have never been taught how to communicate, it'll hamper you in your life's journey. You'll struggle in your relationships in many ways. So let's have a look at that. We will try and unpack this a little bit. For us, greeting was really important as a gesture of honor. I mean, there's no culture in the world where greeting is unimportant. It's a recognition, and just the very language of Zulu, where it's, Sawubona, I see you. There's something deeply, what's the right word? Not deeply offensive. There's something offensive if I just get ignored in a greeting. If I walk up to somebody and they ignore me, that is actually more than offensive. It would be somebody deliberately making a statement about me or not wanting to speak to me. Now, I understand with young children that's a very natural thing because you've got this great giant of a person looming over them trying to greet them, and it can be intimidating and they get shy. So they close into their little world and just hope that it'll all go away. And that's a natural response, and some children will do it more than others. They're slightly more shy characters. But at the end of the day, it's discourteous. You can get away with it with a young child, but that mustn't be left in a child because it looks quite, it becomes a habit, which is really unhelpful.
And the best way is to be very proactive in those situations. So to role play, to speak about it, to show them what you expect. We used to tell our children these 5 S's that are up on the screen. You stand, you shake, you smile, you see, you say, what you're going to call the person. We had decided as a couple how we wanted our children to act, and then we were very, very intentional. But you cannot wait for the last minute when you're standing in front of someone in the shops or at church and expect your child, and you start going, come, what must you say? Now look at you. You really do have to proactively parent this.
Yeah. So, okay. So. For us, this was a really important value, and we required it of our children, and it was hard work. Some of them, 2 of them, it was particularly hard work, and they were naturally very shy. and two of them loved greeting people. It was much easier.
And
So
to this day, we still have to work on one of our children to
Yeah.
greet, even as a young adult. It
Yeah.
is still exhausting, but we still have to work
Yeah.
with it.
So I think one of the things you can ask yourself is what to call an older person. So some people require, like for example, saying Uncle Sheila, Uncle Richard, Auntie Sheila. Others is called, Richard and Sheila. Some it can be as formal as sir or ma'am or however you do it. But just think about what is an appropriate, respectful form of greeting for a young child to an older person.
For you, and what's
And for
good
you
for you and your husband or your
And also
spouse.
within the context of your culture, it can be quite different. And whatever demonstrates respect, that's the heart of the matter in your life and your family. And find the energy to teach your children how to do it, and require it of them, coach them beforehand, and off you go. So what we were also very strong on in our family is we would never leave undisciplined the unacceptable forms of communication. So these really do need to be disciplined, and there need to be boundaries in place regarding this. In other words, if they cross a boundary of unacceptable communication, there is a consequence. And so for us, things like just ignoring us or having silence and ignoring us was unacceptable. Definitely swearing and even strong language, which is the precursor, heck and hell. And when somebody is effectively a young child is going damn, and they're using a word in a sense just to emphasize a strong emotion, it's the precursor to swearing. And actually, it's to us was unacceptable, because we wanted them to be able to articulate their emotions not with a strong language word, but rather the correct way. It was just our value system. Definitely no mocking or manipulative type of language. Any rebellious body language where they might be saying the right things, but with the wrong body. The body language is telling me what's going on in their heart. And that could have looked like whining or sulking or slamming doors. So what even from a very young age, literally from like 2 years on, when they were able to understand the language, we would be saying something along the lines of, that what you're saying is an unacceptable form of communication. We would literally use that phrase. You say, like, when you sit like this and you drop your lip, and we had some children that were very good at that. And we would just say, sulking is not an acceptable form of communication. If you're not able to communicate properly, you may go and sit in the toilet. You can choose. And they would sometimes choose well, and sometimes go and sit in the toilet. And so anything like that. And so as for you and your family, you decide what is an acceptable form or unacceptable form of communication, and only allow the acceptable. So if your children whine at you, it's actually your own fault, to be honest. If you constantly have children whining and they're not able to just ask for something nicely, and they're not able to accept a no if you give a no, so they elevate their tone and become all ridiculous. If you allow that to happen, then that's what you're going to live with. So think quite carefully about what you want to see in your children, and think long term. In other words, what's this going to look like if I leave a whining, manipulative behavior in place? And just basically, if you're being irritated by your own children, then deal with it. It's you've got all the tools you need to put the boundaries and consequences in place. Just do it proactively. And then related to this thing is how to interrupt. And the reality is, children do think about themselves, and interrupting really is a statement about how important my contribution is or my needs are. So you'll often have a situation where there'll be a parental moment, mom and dad are talking, or mom's with friends, and a child will come in and they just want mom's attention right now because whatever needed. That can look like, they'll be like, mom, and mom's trying to finish a conversation. And I've literally seen children come, mom, and they're like in mom's face and push their way into the conversation. And that's a natural thing for children to do, but it's actually deeply selfish, and you never want to allow that to persist. So what we were taught to do, and it worked really well in our family, was what we called the interrupt rule, where you give your children a mechanism to interrupt with respect, because the reality is they do want to have their needs met, and that's good and well that you should meet their needs, but there's a way to do it. So what we would do is our children, and we would play this out, role play it proactively. We had whole games to do with this, to teach them this particular skill. But our children would have to come in and they would just put their hand on our shoulder or our wrist or
On my
something like
shoulder,
that, or something like this, so from behind, and then immediately the parent will acknowledge just by touching their hand. So and we would say that means mommy's heard you. And then what has to happen is then mom has to extract herself from the conversation. So she would say,
I'll be talking that, say, just one moment, my daughter wants to speak to me, and then I'd turn, we'd have a conversation, and then we'd go on.
Yeah.
But it's very proactive, this. You've got to train your kids. So we made it into a game, and we played the interrupt rule game as a family. And then before we went out somewhere, we said, okay, remember guys, we're going to play the interrupt rule when we go to church today. So let's play this game, and let's see how well you can do. And then on the way back from church, we would celebrate when everyone got it right, and it is such a useful thing. To this day, we still use it.
yeah, I mean, it's our children will walk into a room. They don't have to come and touch us now. They're old enough. They'll just catch our eye, and we'll just give a dip of the head, acknowledge that we've heard you, we've seen you looking for attention, and we will carry on the conversation until there's a logical pause. And then I'll just say to my friend, Brent, excuse me a moment, and then we'll have a conversation. When you've got very young children, make sure you extract yourself quickly from the conversation because they're going to break. So get in there first before they break. And so, you know, if you, as quickly as you can, just say, excuse me a moment, and you turn to your child. But as they get older, you can, you know, wait for a natural pause in the conversation. So it's more than just a polite gesture. I mean, interruption is a very, very helpful part of modeling everything here. And also when it comes to modeling it, you treat your children with the same level of respect. In other words, as a parent, just because you mom or dad doesn't give you a right to interrupt their worlds. So if they are with their friends, don't just barge in there, literally model it. Don't put your hand on their shoulder or just sort of politely interrupt them. Don't just assume that you have the right to barge in on their lives.
I haven't got this one right.
And then lastly, communicating emotions. So the reality is emotions are very real and our children have them and they don't know what they are and they often well up and there isn't a natural mechanism to get it out. So, or not a skillful mechanism, so it manifests in some or other nastiness that you don't like to see. It's very difficult to parent your children when they are in a sort of full moment of deep emotion. You haven't got access to their hearts in a sense. So it's not helpful necessarily to be in a very emotive state. Anyway, so what we found is it's very helpful to, this is with younger children, put a name to it. So we used to have a smiley face type chart like this, and we would train the children how to, you know, they could name things and we would put a name to it.
So are you feeling discouraged or are you feeling unhappy or are you frustrated? And we used to name the emotion.
And use it properly, name it properly.
Yeah, because then they used to come to me and say, Mom, I'm so frustrated with my brother. He's not doing this. And then they were able to explain what they were feeling. It was really helpful.
Yep. And then I think another thing is you've got to provide them with an outlet that is reasonable. In other words, the reality is they are feeling the emotion. So you don't just want to say, stop feeling that, because that's an unhelpful thing to say. It's better to say, well, okay, when you are feeling angry, let me give you some tools. So this is what you do. You take yourself out of the situation, for example, go to your bedroom and read a book or play a game or do a puzzle, go for a walk, whatever, you know, make it positive and fun that they have an outlet for that emotion. When you are frustrated or when you are sad, what are you going to do? And it's helpful to just provide an outlet there. And potentially coach them through the emotion because it's very real for them. So it might be that they have a younger sibling who is making them very angry and their anger is in a sense legitimate or their frustration is legitimate. So you don't just want to dismiss that. And you
don't want to say to them, don't cry, because you know what, crying is a very real emotion. And being upset is an emotion. You don't want to squash it so that they actually bottle things up. But you want to give them tools on how to handle it.
So if a young sibling breaks an older sibling's toy, and that they do it because they're young and immature, it's a 1-year-old who broke something, you know, your daughter's favorite glass, something or other, and they are sad and they are frustrated and angry, all those things, coach them through the moment and help them overcome it. And the end goal of all of this is that you are aiming for self-control of your emotions, of their emotions. That they can experience life, they can have an emotion, but they know how to deal with it. That's really, it's emotional intelligence that you are aiming for at the end of the day. And so again, this is it's a whole parenting type of journey. It's not just young kids. this applies very much to young adults. They come back from their friends and they're traumatized, and you help them process the moment.
And even parents.
Even wives and husbands.
Husbands.
Yeah.
So we've got friends, Dave and Shirley Phipson, who have created this game called Emoji Game. And we're going to be sending a clip during the week where they explain this game. You can download it for free off their Facebook page, or you can email them and they'll send it to you. It's just won an award overseas, and it's the most beautiful game where you print out a little board, and then they play it during supper, and you've got a dice, and you throw the dice, and it's just great fun, and it helps to get their family talking about emotions. So during the week, we'll send you the clip and all the details, and you can go and get your own game, and it's great fun.
So, to land this whole thing, not just communicating with emotion, with honor, is to try. I mean, I was struggling to think, what will I say in a deeply profound conclusion for this whole thing? But at the end of the day, it really boils down to we deeply desire our children to have godly character, to be these young men and women who are able to stand firm in a world that really is struggling with to stand firm, that they would have this character, the strength of character to be godly people. And it's like that analogy of the garden, is that you are planning the garden of their lives, and to have planted all that proactive work you're going to do as parenting, all that positive encouragement, all that, in a sense, your speaking words of life into them is dealing with, is planting the good that you want to see. Every time you share your heart, every time you explain yourself, every time you take the time to talk about the moral reasons why, all of these things, you're planting something in this beautiful garden. And often it looks like a very small plant to start, and you think, what significance will come of that? But as somebody who loves planting trees, I often plant things that are a few inches high, and I look at them now, even a few years later, and these things are towering over me already. Things grow quickly in your children's lives. So don't be discouraged, especially in the younger years when you think, oh, what goodness is it? You know, I seem to spend the whole day just parenting 3 young children, and it seemed to have achieved nothing. And but you must know that you are planting the future garden of their lives. And it's not to say you shouldn't weed, and you do weed, and you deal with stuff. But at the end of the day, the heart of what you're trying to do is highly proactive, and it's very, very fruitful at the end of the time. So just to land off with this thing, our reminder to you, couch time is so important. It's a time to get unity. It's a time to get vision. It's a time to establish your proactive parenting.
Get a strategy in place.
Get your strategies in place. Take all of the stuff that we've talked about. There's been so much we've talked about. Find what works for you and your family. Read your season, read your children, interpret everything we've said through the light of, okay, we need to deal with this thing right now. And pick your battles. Don't do the whole thing at once, because you'll traumatize yourself and your kids. Just choose a few things, a few aspects of character and behavior that you want to deal with, and try and get the system going, the mindsets, the principles that we've talked about, so that you get into a thing where it's not so much that you have to try and remember everything, but it's just it's a natural overflow of who you are. So
we just want to say thanks so much for joining us every Monday night. We really appreciate you being a part of this, and we really do trust that it's added value. And this